Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you this evening. The Lal Street gains for the third straight week despite a lackluster Friday. The Nifty has gained 4% in the last 3 weeks. The rupee remains above the 88 mark against the dollar. The government relaxes its position on granting relief to cash-strapped Vodafone Idea, tells the Supreme Court it does not oppose the telecom company's plea, seeking relief on AGR due, says some solution may be required as the facts have changed on the ground. The government owns 49% stake in Vodafone Idea. The US government targets Iran's Chabahar Port, which is being developed by India, revokes the waiver on sanctions granted in 2018. This is a setback for India as the port is crucial to access Central Asia and Afghanistan. Chabahar is also close to the Gwt port in Pakistan, developed by China. India says it expects Saudi Arabia to keep in mind mutual interests and sensibilities after it signed a defense pact with Pakistan. As per the pact, an attack on either of the nations would be considered an aggression against both. President Trump defends the 50% tariffs on India, also praises Prime Minister Modi and says he has a good relationship with him. Trump claims Russia will settle if oil prices see a sharp drop.
It's not only solar and wind hybrid projects that we are implementing. We propose to get into module and cell manufacturing.
RPSG Group Chairman Sanjeev Goenka commits to a capital expenditure of 1 lakh crore rupees in the next 5 years. Tells CNBC TV 18 their first gigawatt of cell module capacity will go on stream in 45 days. Says they're looking at releasing their first AI-generated film in 12 months. Margin lending by India's top 12 banks rises more than fourfold since the pandemic. The exposure of India's top 3 private lenders, HDFC, ICICI and Axis Bank, to stockbrokers crosses 1 lakh crore rupees. The US market regulator is likely to propose a rule change after President Trump's call to switch quarterly earnings to semi-annual schedule. SEC Chairman Paul Atkins says if the rule change is approved, companies will have the freedom to decide if they want to report earnings every 3 months or every 6 months. Donald Trump and Xi Jinping hold a phone call as Washington and Beijing try to finalize a deal to keep TikTok operating in the US. This was the second call between the two leaders since Trump returned to the White House. President Trump threatens to cancel licenses of TV stations that criticize him. This comes after pressure from the administration led to ABC suspending late-night host Jimmy Kimmel for making remarks about the murder of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. The Israeli military mobilizes more troops as it continues the ground assault on densely populated Gaza City. The death toll in Gaza has crossed 65,000. United States blocks a UN ceasefire resolution for the 6th time. The truce call was approved by 14 out of the 15 member states, barring the US. Apple's new iPhone 17 goes on sale. Thousand-strong Apple stores across the world. The scuffle breaks out at the Mumbai Apple store. The starting price of the phone in India is 83,000 rupees. And 3 days to go for the new GST regime to come into play. A special report on how retailers, chemists, car dealers and others are gearing up for the 22nd. As always, let's start with the day's market action. The Sensex and the Nifty gained over 1% this week, and that's despite a lackluster Friday. Both indices lost less than 0.5% today. In the last 3 weeks, the Sensex and the Nifty have gained 4%. That's the picture as far as this week is concerned. In the last 3 weeks, up 4%. All sectoral indices, barring the FMCG index, gaining this week. So that's the story there. And in the money markets, rupee closing above 88 to the dollar, gaining some strength against the dollar, but as I pointed out, above the 88 mark. The 10-year bond yield softened in trade today. That's the money market action for you. Now, several listed entities of the Adani Group surging in intraday trade today. This after the market regulator SEBI gave a clean chit to the group on some allegations by US-based short seller Hindenburg Research. The group added nearly 70,000 crores in market cap today on the back of the move that we saw in Adani Entertainment, Adani Ports and Adani Power, taking its overall valuation to around 14 lakh crores. The SEBI order details that it found no violation of laws, fraudulent practices, market manipulation or insider trading. In a post on X, chairman of the group, Gautam Adani, said, and I quote, SEBI has reaffirmed what the group has always maintained, that the Hindenburg claims were baseless, end of quote. But the big corporate story we're tracking, and this comes in from the Supreme Court, shares of Vodafone Idea surging today after the government relaxed its position on granting relief to the cash-strapped telecom player. The government has told the Supreme Court that it does not oppose the telecom company's most latest plea seeking relief on AGR dues. Remember, the government owns 49% stake in Vodafone Idea. Ashmit is standing by with more details on what transpired in the hearing. Ashmit, significant relief there coming in for Vodafone, with the Solicitor General essentially telling the Supreme Court that the government has had a change of position. Now, the change of position is the government is a 49% stakeholder, so it can hardly take itself to the NCLT.
Well, indeed, that appears to be the case. In fact, one of the arguments that the Solicitor General today opened with is that, look, I have skin in the game. The government in larger public interest has taken on equity stake. It has skin in the game. It holds 49% as a part of this company. And that was the rationale that the Solicitor General gave, that facts have changed on the ground. There was, in fact, an interjection that came from the CJR. He said that, look, there are previous orders as well. We need some finality to this issue. And it is that a moment where the Solicitor General had come in and said that facts on the ground have changed, that there is a need felt for the indulgence of the Apex Court. There's a need felt for support to be granted to the company. There's need for resolution of this issue, and it is on account of that that the Supreme Court's blessings have been sought. And this is important because this is the first time that the government is squarely batting for some relief for Vodafone Idea. There are multiple petitions that Vodafone Idea had moved in the past. Similar cases had been argued that there's been double counting of arithmetic errors in the AGR demand, that the company will go south if no relief has been granted. What is different this time around is that on previous occasions, the government had taken a neutral stance and had left this broader issue to the wisdom of the court. The courts, as we know, had decided the matter against granting any relief on the AGR front to the telecom companies. Now, dramatically different approach. The government has a very clear view that we now have skin in the game. We now need protection. We now need the indulgence of the court. And to that end, the Solicitor General assuring that they'll be coming back with a few proposals for the Apex Court to consider. So a short window is what the Apex Court has granted. The Supreme Court will resume hearing on Friday of next week, and that's perhaps when we'll begin to get more clarity on the contours of this relief mechanism that the government may contemplate, especially with respect to Vodafone Idea.
Well, we will have to wait for another week to find out if this is going to proceed. But the government making its position very clear, it will want the Supreme Court to reconsider its position on the AGR matter. Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. And sticking with court hearings, the Supreme Court judge has recused himself from hearing the PIL against Vedanta, Hindustan Zinc and Vedanta Resources over alleged financial irregularities and regulatory violations. The petition cites a report by US-based financial research group Viceroy Research. The report alleges the companies are draining listed entity Vedanta via disproportionately large dividends and artificial brand fee. The case is now expected to be listed before a fresh bench in the Supreme Court for further hearing. The other big story, in a bid to ramp up pressure on Iran, the US government is targeting the Chabahar port in the country, which is being developed by India. The Trump administration has revoked the waiver on sanctions granted in 2018. This is a setback for India as the port is crucial to access Central Asia and Afghanistan. It's also a key hub that links India with Russia and Europe. Parikshit is here with more on the decision by the US administration and the significance of the Chabahar port for India's maritime security and trade. Parikshit, you've been speaking with experts. What do they say?
India's strategic trade gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asia, the Chabahar port in Iran, is now being targeted by the US. The Trump administration has removed the waiver on sanctions that it granted in 2018 to ramp up pressure on Iran. So why is the Chabahar port so crucial and important for India? Why did New Delhi sign a long-term contract with Iran to develop it? The simple answer is China. That's because the Beijing-operated Gwalior port in Pakistan is just 140 kilometers away from the Chabahar port and is also about 550 nautical miles from the Kandla port in Gujarat. These two factors make this port India's best bet, both for strategic reasons and geopolitically as well, as this is a crucial India-Iran connectivity hub, which counters China's presence in the Arabian Sea. India had proposed to develop Chabahar for the first time in 2003. New Delhi's vision was to build Chabahar as a major regional and international hub for humanitarian purposes and the movement of goods. This strategic port also has all the plus points of a major cargo hub. This is a deep water port providing easy access for large cargo ships. It is also connected by a road with Afghanistan. India has used this port for sending wheat, medicines to Afghanistan. Chabahar also serves as a key hub in the international north-south transport corridor linking India with Russia and Europe. India had pledged investments of $500 million in Chabahar in 2016. In 2024, India said it will invest around $120 million in Shahid Beheshti Port in Chabahar. A credit window of $250 million has been provided for infrastructure upgrades, and India has supplied port equipment worth about $24 million to develop the Chabahar port. Reacting to the US's move, Ranveer Jaiswal, spokesperson of the External Affairs Ministry, said that India is examining the possible impact of Washington's decision, which in 10 days from now will kick in.
See, you would have seen the press statement which was issued by the US side yesterday on revocation of sanctions waiver that applies to Chabahar Port. We are presently examining the implications that this revocation has for India.
Well, that's the Ministry of External Affairs responding to the US action on Chabahar Port. And staying with diplomatic news, India says it expects Saudi Arabia to keep in mind mutual interests and sensibilities. This after Saudi Arabia signed a defense pact with Pakistan. Now, as per the pact, an attack on either of the nations would be considered an aggression against both. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif was in Riyadh earlier this week, where he met with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Remember, India-Pakistan ties have been in cold storage since the terror attack on civilians in Pahalgam earlier this year. 26 people, including 25 tourists, were killed.
India and Saudi Arabia, we have a wide-ranging strategic partnership which has deepened in the last several years considerably. We expect that this strategic partnership will keep in mind mutual interest and sensitivities.
प्रधानमंत्री का 75th बर्थडे बुर्ज खलीफा में बहुत ब्यूटीफुली मनाया गया। मोहम्मद बिन सलमान ने भी, यानी सऊदी अरेबिया एक और खाड़ी देश है, जिन्होंने उनको विश किया। काफ़ी हमारी अच्छी दोस्ती है, लेकिन आज वहाँ एक डिफेंस कोऑपरेशन पाकिस्तान के साथ है, तो ये इस रीजन में कुछ खलल तो नहीं पैदा करेगा इन टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रेड इक्वेशंस, रिलेशंस, आपसी म्यूचुअल संबंध?
मुझे इसकी ज़्यादा जानकारी नहीं है, मैं तो अपनी मीटिंगों में था यूएई में
जी, पर
इतना जरूर कह सकता हूँ कि भारत के संबंध यूएई के साथ बड़े मजबूत हैं और कोई भी इस संबंध को खराब नहीं कर सकता या अफेक्ट नहीं कर सकता। भारत के संबंध हर देश के साथ अच्छे हैं, हर देश के साथ अपने पायदान पे खड़े रहते हैं और इसकी ज़्यादा जानकारी तो फॉरेन ऑफिस से दे पाएगा।
Well, that's the Commerce Minister reacting to the defense agreement between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. The big newsmaker this evening, RPSG Group Chairman Sanjeev Goenka, says the conglomerate's plans to venture into cell and module manufacturing and the first gigawatt of capacity will go on stream in the next 45 days. In an exclusive conversation with us, Goenka said the company will also look at export opportunities of these cells and modules as they offer a good business model. He also said he was confident about achieving a market cap of 2 lakh crore rupees and committed a capex expenditure of nearly 1 lakh crores in the next 5 years. Speaking on the future revenue streams for the group's entertainment subsidiary, Saregama, Goenka said the conglomerate will ride the artificial intelligence wave by venturing into AI-generated video content. He said Saregama will hopefully launch its first AI-generated film in the next 12 months.
For the next 5 years, what we are committing to is a total capex of about 1 lakh crores, largely in the energy area. It'll go also in chemicals, but chemicals is not that capex intensive, as you know. So renewables is going to be a large part of our investment. And let me make an announcement today on CNBC TV 18. It's not only solar and wind hybrid projects that we are implementing. We propose to get into module and cell manufacturing. Our first gigawatt of module capacity goes on stream in the next 45 days. So that's something we've been quietly implementing. And in the next 3 years, there'll be 3 gigawatts of cell and 3 gigawatts of module capacity that'll go on stream. We are keen to get a share of that pie. We already operate in UP, in Greater Noida, and that's one of the most successful privatization cases of power in the private sector. And it is UP's most successful utility. So we've now begun to understand how to operate in UP. And Yogi Ji's government provides a very secure law and order, and so helps a utility for sure. We're keen, and we are going to bid. We are looking at getting into AI-generated films.
Okay.
So the whole film
Will be AI.
it will be AI.
Okay.
And so you produce it at a fraction of the cost. So the whole entire film, so the scripting is normal. Everything is normal.
That's still people.
That's still people, but the whole production and the whole casting is AI.
So there won't be any actual actors?
No.
When will we see the first AI film being
Hopefully
released?
in 12 months.
In 12 months?
Hopefully.
And there's plenty more in that conversation with Sanjeev Goenka that's coming up for you at 10:30 p.m. right here on CNBC TV 18. On to a CNBC TV 18 analysis. India's top 3 private lenders have a total exposure of over 1 lakh crore rupees to the stockbrokers. Now, this is a sharp rise in margin lending by banks after the RBI cracked down on the exposure of NBFCs. Yusuf is here with more details. Yusuf.
With domestic funding largely fueling the rally in stock markets, the exposure of banks to broker funding has seen an exponential rise since the pandemic. At the end of FY25, stockbrokers have borrowed 1.5 lakh crore rupees from 12 listed banks that are part of the Nifty Bank Index. Out of these, 1.1 lakh crore rupees is the exposure of India's top 3 private lenders, HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank and Axis Bank. In FY25, Axis Bank saw the sharpest rise in exposure to broker lending, with advances nearly doubling to 34,000 crore rupees. The exposure of HDFC Bank climbed over 32%. ICICI Bank's exposure grew 11%. The exposure of SBI dropped over 18%, but only after the public lender saw a 7-fold rise in FY24. The combined exposure of India's top 12 banks was just over 35,000 crore rupees at the start of the pandemic in FY21. Since then, it has seen a sharp surge of more than 4-fold to cross 1.5 lakh crore rupees mark in FY25. You can get more details on this deep dive by subscribing to CNBC TV 18 Access. Visit our website, cnbctv18.com, for more details.
Well, that's the CNBC TV 18 analysis. Yusuf, many thanks. Market regulator in the US, the SEC, is likely to propose a rule change after President Trump's call to switch quarterly earnings to semi-annual. Speaking to CNBC, SEC Chairman Paul Atkins said if the rule change is approved, companies will have the freedom to decide if they want to report earnings every 3 months or every 6 months.
You know, for the sake of shareholders in public companies, the market can decide, you know, what the proper cadence is. And for companies who have debt issuances and things like that, I'm sure their banks will have something to say about it. But in principle, I think, you know, to propose change in what our rules are now, I think would be a good way forward. And then we'll consider that and move forward after that.
Well, could it be the end of quarter tak in the US? We don't know just yet, but certainly a proposal being moved in that direction. Now, President Trump has wrapped up his second state visit to the UK. The UK rolled out the red carpet with lavish ceremonies at Windsor Castle. At a joint press conference with Prime Minister Starmer, Trump criticized Russia's President Putin for, in his words, letting him down over Ukraine. He also condemned European nations for buying Russian oil and suggested Russia might settle if oil prices fall. When asked about India, President Trump defended the punitive tariffs, but also added that he has a good relationship with the Prime Minister and praised his statement after a phone call between both leaders earlier this week.
When I found out that the European nations were buying oil from Russia, and as you know, I'm very close to India. I'm very close to the Prime Minister of India. I spoke to him the other day, wished him a happy birthday. We have a very good relationship. He put out a beautiful statement too. But I said, you know, I sanctioned them. China is paying a very large tariff right now to the United States. But I'm willing to do other things, but not when the people that I'm fighting for are buying oil from Russia. If the oil price comes down, very simply, Russia will settle.
Well, that's President Trump. And President of the World Economic Forum, Jorge Brende, says the trade challenge between India and the US will be solved in the short term, within few weeks, perhaps. In a fireside chat at the PAFI Annual Forum, he told me that both Washington and New Delhi are keen on a resolution soon. Brende also flagged the weak foreign direct investments into emerging and developing economies as a concern.
You're coming to New Delhi via Washington, D.C. Do you come bearing good news, Borge Brende, for the India-US relationship?
I think yes. I think that challenge will be solved in the coming weeks. My impression also when I was in Washington, D.C. was that they're serious about finding solutions, and with the people and the ministers I met here, I think it's the same approach. And of course the tariffs are the tariffs, but I think the most challenging tariff, the highest of all tariffs today, is uncertainty.
Well, that's the World Economic Forum's President Borge Brende. President Trump and China's President Xi Jinping held a phone call, and Washington and Beijing are trying to finalize a deal to keep TikTok operating in the US. The talks could be a precursor to a potential in-person meeting later this year. This is the second call between the two leaders since Trump returned to the White House. Up next on India Business Hour, 3 days to go for the new GST regime to come into play. We get you a special report on how retailers, chemists and car dealers are gearing up for GST 2.0. Catch all of CNBC TV 18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Geo Hotstar. In international headlines, Israel has intensified its ground operations in Gaza City. The Israeli army is forcing tens of thousands of Palestinians onto coastal roads to drive them out of the Strip's main urban center. Gaza's health officials have said that Israel's army has killed at least 16 Palestinians across the enclave since dawn. The US has once again vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate and lasting ceasefire in Gaza. The resolution was approved by all 14 other council members. It also urged Israel to lift all restrictions on aid into the besieged enclave. The US maintained that the resolution fails to condemn Hamas or recognize Israel's right to defend itself. President Trump is threatening to cancel the licenses of TV stations that criticize him. This comes after pressure from the administration led to ABC suspending late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. The administration alleged that Kimmel implied that the murder of American political activist Charlie Kirk was committed by a Trump supporter. Protesters have begun demonstrations across Los Angeles questioning the network's decision to indefinitely suspend Jimmy Kimmel's show. When asked about it, President Trump lashed out at the media and defended broadcast regulator Carr, who's been seen as the man behind the crackdown on late-night TV hosts.
Well, I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I got 97% negative, and yet I won it easily. I won all 7 swing states, popular, I won everything. And if they're 97% against, they give me holy bad publicity or breasts. And if they're getting a license, I would think maybe their license should be taken away.
Well, that's President Trump. Apple's new iPhone 17 series is now on sale. Thousands crowded in long queues outside Apple stores across the world. The iPhone frenzy gripping India as well, with buyers queuing up overnight in New Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru and Pune. A scuffle broke out at the Mumbai Apple store as thousands waited to enter. Security personnel were seen trying to handle the crowds. All 4 variants of the iPhone available now in India. Prices start at 83,000 rupees.
The models that they were most interested in and are going out to purchase today are the Pro variant and the Pro Max. So that's good news for Apple. That's the top tier. And they were very interested in this cosmic orange color.
Well, I was at the launch event in Cupertino and there was huge excitement. And I think overall, in the era of sameness that we have seen with the iPhone, it's great that we've seen a completely redesigned lineup.
I just love having that experience with Apple every year.
I'm a bit of a content creator, so I'm needing that camera and also the battery. I thought about going for the Air, but I don't know whether or not the battery is going to be able to hold up.
I'm I'm at the Apple store at the BKC, and you can see since yesterday evening the people are standing in the queue, and massive crowd gather here, and almost more than 3,000 people has gathered here. And we can. So how many hours you are standing in the queue?
22 hours.
22 hours.
Yes.
And you are impressed with the new iPhone 17?
Yeah, Pro Max.
You are waiting for this iPhone since how long?
3:30 in the morning.
आपने तो एक नहीं 5 आईफोन खरीदे.
पूरी फैमिली चेंज करेगी अभी 16 Pro Max है 17 Pro.
Well, the iPhone frenzy. With less than 3 days to go for the new GST regime to come into play, it's a race against time for retailers as they try to revise prices. From car dealerships to the back-end integration has been relatively easy. Timsy Jayapuria gets us a status check of how retailers are preparing for the GST cuts.
One of the most sweeping GST rate cuts so far is set to take effect, and the cuts will start reflecting in your shopping bills from 22nd September. Be it your daily medicines or conveniences like biscuit, milk, bread or cars, the government is sure that they want to make this happen this time. And the shops and stores are busy realigning their systems to make this effect happen real time on ground from 22nd September. Shopkeepers are busy getting ready to pass on the savings from lower GST rates to customers, but the back-end work is not simple.
जो MRP है वो कम हो जाएगी 22 तारीख से. जो बिलिंग होगी वो नए GST रेट पे होगी और लिस्ट आ चुकी है, किसी की आ गई है, किसी की आने वाली है, तो वो 22 तारीख से हो जाएगी. सिस्टम अलाइंड हो गए हैं, 22 तारीख से वो प्रॉपर्ली वर्किंग करेंगे.
For chemists, the biggest challenge is relabeling old stock and ensuring new prices show up at the billing counter right way. So, on the request of All India Chemist Association, companies have been asked to send a QR code-based price list to make it easy to check which medicine will attract what price. Small shops, however, have another hurdle. They've been told to sell at lower prices even if the labeling has the old price. This could lead to some confusion.
अभी जैसे कि कंपनियों ने हमें गाइड किया है कि जो भी स्टॉक अभी हमारे पास में है उसे हमें रिटेलर्स को जैसे जो भी जीएसटी पे डिफरेंस आ रहा है 12% वाला अगर 5% पे आया है तो 7% का डिफरेंस हो गया, वो हम रिटेलर को डिस्काउंट दे रहे हैं और वहाँ पे जो हमारे सेल्स पर्सन हैं वहाँ जाके वो गाइड कर रहे हैं शॉपकीपर को कि आप यहाँ पे एंड यूज़र के लिए 7% का डिस्काउंट चलाइए. किसी जीएसटी रेंज में 11% का भी डिफरेंस आ रहा है तो वो वहाँ पे फिर 11% का डिस्काउंट चलाएंगे शॉपकीपर जो अभी उनके पास में एग्जिस्टिंग स्टॉक है.
But for car dealerships, passing on the reduced prices is easier. Companies have been announcing price cuts in advance and back-end integration has been easier.
जो जीएसटी के रेट हैं वो ऑटोमेटिकली 22 तारीख से एप्लीकेबल हो जाएंगे. आप कार अभी बुक करा सकते हैं, अपना कलर वेरिएंट मॉडल आपको टाइम से अवेलेबिलिटी के लिए आपको मिल सकता है क्योंकि कार पे वेटिंग भी रहेगी क्योंकि अब हर कस्टमर को जीएसटी का बेनिफिट लेना है.
But their problem is that the compensation cess removal comes without any mechanism to adjust credit on existing inventory. So it's just 2 days left for the GST rate cuts to become a reality and preparations are underway to make this happen, but not without some loose ends. From re-stickering of medicines to clearing stock, it will still take some time for the full benefits to trickle down to the consumer. But for the Indian consumer, it is one of the biggest rate cuts that is round the corner and one of the most visible price resets in the recent past. In New Delhi, Timsy Jayapuria.
And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. But do remember, as we've been pointing out, GST, the new GST regime kicks in on the 22nd, which is Monday. CNBC TV 18 will bring you a special event with the Finance Minister, the DPAM Secretary, the Chief Economic Advisor, and many, many more. That's coming up for you at 11:30 a.m. on the 22nd of September. The Defense Secretary, the former Niti Aayog CEO Amitabh Kant, Rajiv Memani of CII, Santosh Iyer of Mercedes-Benz, Utpal Seth of the Trust Group. So corporate India, market, watchers, investors, and of course, policymakers will all join us on the 22nd of September as the new GST regime kicks in. From all of us here for now, thanks very much for watching.